Good afternoon, I'm Bakhtiar Aslanov and you are watching AnewZ. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. A powerful blast hits a chemical plant in eastern China. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accuses Europe of sabotaging Trump's efforts to mediate the Ukraine war. The United Nations warns of a challenging situation in Sudan. To China now, an explosion at a chemical plant in the eastern province of Shandong killed at least 5 people with 19 injured and 6 missing. Our own Mahnur Maktoum reports from China.
A powerful explosion rocked the Gomi Yodao chemical plant in Weifang City of China's Shandong province. The blast occurred just before noon and caused a massive fire with thick smoke blowing into the sky visible from miles away. The explosion shattered windows up to 3 kilometers away and caused significant structural damage. The chemical plant is specialized in producing substances used in pesticides and pharmaceuticals. It was established in 2019 and employed more than 500 workers. Over 230 emergency personnel responded swiftly, working to contain the fire and search for survivors. Authorities have already begun environmental monitoring to check for toxic releases and have advised nearby residents to wear masks. The cause of the explosion remains under investigation. However, the event has sparked renewed calls for stricter safety enforcement at hazardous industrial sites across China. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing, China.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth welcomed his Polish counterpart to the Pentagon on Tuesday. Poland's commitment to NATO spending was praised, highlighting closer military cooperation amid Europe's security concerns.
At the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth greeted his Polish counterpart Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz with an honor cordon before their talks on Tuesday. This marks the second meeting between the two countries' top defense officials in 3 months. Hegseth once again called Poland a model ally, commending Warsaw's dedication to spending 5% of its GDP on defense.
The relationship between the United States and Poland is rock solid. Both countries demonstrate peace through strength. President Trump also sends his regards and appreciation for all Polish leadership and the Polish people do. A model ally for the United States there on the eastern flank of NATO, and we're going to be encouraging 5%. We don't have to encourage Poland. You are almost there already, leading the way on investment in Europe's largest land army, modernizing that force, and the defense industrial base, which is critically important, not just obviously here in the United States, but in Europe as well.
But clearly, the comments followed NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's expectation that members will agree to a 5% defense spending target at next month's Hague summit. He also thanked Kosiniak-Kamysz for hosting US troops in Poland. Approximately 10,000 US soldiers are currently stationed in Poland as part of a rotational presence, primarily under the European Deterrence Initiative.
Also, and finally, thank you for your great support.
Meanwhile, Kosiniak-Kamysz said that Europe must take a larger responsibility for its own defense.
Security challenges have become more serious, complex, and interconnected than ever before. That's why we fully support President Donald Trump's administration's efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. We are sure, and our broad defense cooperation is the best proof that the United States of America remains the guarantor of global stability and development. I'm also certain that it was necessary to send Europe a strong message, a strong signal for burden sharing within NATO, recognizing that Europe must take greater responsibility for its own defense.
The two countries plan to expand cooperation from arms purchases to joint military production, with US investors soon visiting Poland to explore opportunities. They also confirmed the first 8 Apache helicopters from a $10 billion US contract are scheduled to arrive in Poland on the 16th of June. Hegseth also stressed Warsaw's role in advancing the European Union's security action for Europe. This initiative allows 35% of joint defence procurements to be made with allies outside Europe, benefiting both Poland and the US.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow is ready to resume peace talks with Ukraine once both sides exchange written proposals. Lavrov made the remarks after meeting Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Fidan, during a two-day visit to Moscow, also met President Vladimir Putin to discuss developments after recent direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. Both ministers reaffirmed support for a negotiated end to the war.
President Trump is a person who wants a result, and when he sees that his efforts to promote the settlement as they agreed with the Russian President Putin, including the meeting in Istanbul, including the accord to exchange memorandums between Russia and Ukraine, which will contain not just baseless demands as a smokescreen for continuation of aggressive anti-Russian policy, but the specific components for solution of the issue aimed at elimination of the root causes. And when Trump sees that a small group of the European representatives starts to sabotage his efforts, pushing Ukraine toward absolutely reckless actions like drone attacks on Moscow and other our cities, and attacks on the helicopter of the Russian president, of course he may reveal certain emotions.
The European Union has approved the creation of a €150 billion arms fund amid growing fears of a possible Russian attack on the region and doubts over Washington's security commitments to the continent. The measure was backed by 26 of the EU's 27 member countries, with Hungary abstaining.
The European Commission has given the green light for a monetary loan scheme to member states for collaborative defence projects. The Security Action for Europe scheme, known as SAFE, was first proposed in March, as concerns deepened that the US, under President Donald Trump, might not come to Europe's defence if needed. This scheme is designed to strengthen the EU defence industry, with an emphasis on cross-border projects and buying European supplies and arms. The measure was backed by 26 of the EU's 27 countries, with Hungary abstaining. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, EU countries have already increased defence spending by more than 30%. But leaders say it's still not enough. Moscow has criticised the initiative as fueling war, based on what it calls an invented threat. But many in Europe note that Russia made similar claims before launching its assault on Ukraine. The SAFE Fund signals a new era in European defence, one that is united, armed, and prepared for a future without guarantees.
Families of hostages gathered in Tel Aviv to mark 600 days since the start of the Gaza war on Wednesday. The emotional event featured a symbolic formation and urgent calls for international help as the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues.
On a Tel Aviv beach, families and activists created a large yellow ribbon to honour those still held captive in Gaza. It marks 600 days since the war began, and many of the participants accuse the Israeli government of neglecting the hostages and demand immediate global action. Families also say the pain of waiting continues to weigh heavily.
Today marks 600 days. 600 days since 58 innocent people were kidnapped by Hamas and dragged into the tunnels of Gaza. 600 days of darkness. 600 days without freedom, 600 days of abandonment. The hostages, our family members, have endured horrific, inhumane conditions. The longer they remain underground, the more danger they face, and this suffering extends beyond them. The people of Gaza are victims too, held hostage by Hamas rule and the extended, sad war.
We cry out to President Trump, you are the only one who can act to stop the vengeance war and ensure the return of all, both the living for rehabilitation and the fallen for burial. Know this, Mr. President, we are the majority of the people, the majority who say that returning the hostages is the first priority, a part of stopping the death and suffering on both sides. Use your power and determination to achieve peace and bring our loved ones home.
Hamas says it is ready to release all remaining hostages and agree to a permanent ceasefire if Israel withdraws completely from Gaza. Israel has rejected the offer, insisting the war must continue until Hamas is dismantled. Meanwhile, Hamas has called for global protests from the 30th of May to the 1st of June to take action against the ongoing violence and blockade in Gaza. Since the 2nd of March, Israel has blocked food, medical and humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, worsening the humanitarian crisis. This has raised international concern and calls for urgent relief and a ceasefire.
Azerbaijan marks its Independence Day with the symbolic opening of Lachen International Airport, attended by the leaders of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Pakistan. Also, trilateral summit concluded in Lachen. Our Orkan Almashov has more on this. Orkan, please provide us with detailed information.
Hello, Bakhtiar. Yes, indeed. This has been a day that has been characterized not only by ceremonial occasion, not only by the opening ceremony of the Lachen International Airport, but also by regional cohesion, profound symbolism, and also profoundly important historic political statements. As you know, today is the 28th of May, of course, as Independence Day of Azerbaijan. But today is also very important from the perspective of national history of Pakistan, because back in 1997, on the 28th of May, Pakistan was designated as a nuclear power. And the symbolism is profound because this trilateral meeting, second trilateral summit involving Azerbaijani, Turkish and Pakistani leaders taking place in Lachen, which is an important part of Azerbaijani national identity. And this territory, Lachen district, of course, as we all know, before 2020 had been characterized with a sense of loss in the Azerbaijani national mindset. But as of 2020, it's a place which exudes sovereignty and also restoration of Azerbaijani territorial integrity. The symbolism associated with Lachen is absolutely key. Symbolism which unites Azerbaijani and Pakistani histories is another element. And also, today Azerbaijani president greeted his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and together they inaugurated the Lachen International Airport. Turkey and Pakistan are two countries that recognize Azerbaijan's independence in the early 90s when Azerbaijan regained that independence. So these three countries together in Lachen, this means a lot to all these countries involved. And of course, we need to understand beyond symbolism, the geopolitical aspect of what is happening today. This summit is taking place against a backdrop of important developments and also increasingly volatile international climate. The conflict between India and Pakistan now seems to have been sort of resolved. Ceasefire agreement has been attained. And after that attainment of that ceasefire, Pakistani Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif is visiting different countries. He has been to already, he was in Iran and Turkey. And the third stop, his wider regional tour, is Lachen, Azerbaijan. In view of many analysts, this trip solidifies that of Pakistan in terms of actually paying its tribute and paying its gratitude to these countries that supported its position regarding the conflict with India. Today, during the trilateral meeting, President Ilham Aliyev paid his tribute to his Turkish counterpart, congratulated him on the self-dissolution of PKK, describing it as a moment testifying to his political acumen. And also, of course, Prime Minister of Pakistan also paid his tribute to Turkish president. So PKK was touched upon as an important moment. And also, of course, President Aliyev also committed his Pakistani Prime Minister on the latest developments, on the latest achievements, and also both leaders congratulated and supported. They reiterated actually their unwavering support for Pakistan in line with international law when it comes to the conflict involving Kashmir. Interestingly enough, beyond defense cooperation, beyond connectivity agenda, which were the two key pillars of that trilateral meeting. There has been focus on space technology, artificial intelligence, and trilateral format involving these three countries, wherein this element could be augmented further. So symbolism is one element. The fundamental structure, fundamental historical background uniting these three countries can be described as a second dimension. But also, of course, geopolitical climate is a third dimension. It has been said that Azerbaijan, by virtue of its location, by virtue of its capability of connecting Central Asia with Turkey, is already ideally located, and it's a power punching above its weight. Turkey, as a NATO member, as a country with its own characteristics, it's another important element of this trilateral structure. Also, Pakistan is a nuclear power. So it has been suggested that the alliance of these three countries, which have cultivated strong relations based on political, economical, and cultural ties, could actually be a very definitive, very important element of wider Eurasian landscape. So what happened today is, of course, very symbolic, 28th of May, but wider implications for their regional geopolitics are to follow and are to unfold. Orkun Amashov, AnewZ.
Thank you very much for this latest updates. The situation in Sudan is rapidly deteriorating according to the latest statement from the United Nations. The ongoing armed conflict, mass displacement and the spread of infectious diseases are deepening the humanitarian crisis in the country. UN officials are calling for urgent international intervention.
The humanitarian crisis in Sudan is deepening day by day. United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said at a press briefing in New York that ongoing armed clashes, mass displacement of people, and the rapid spread of diseases are further worsening the situation in the country.
North Darfur State artillery shelling continues to impact residential areas of El Fasher in the Abu Shuk camp for internally displaced people. Local sources report daily civilian casualties, and recent days have seen an intensification of bombardments at night.
The situation in South Caucuses is no different. Recent fighting has forced nearly 2,800 people, mostly women and children, to flee from the town of Dibabad. These displaced individuals are now scattered across the Al-Quaz area and other parts of West Kordofan, living in extremely difficult conditions. Their access to basic necessities, such as shelter, medical care and protection, is severely limited.
The situation in the state capital, Kadugli, has also been very seriously deteriorating in recent weeks, with intense shelling and humanitarian access largely cut off. In northern state, authorities report that about 6,000 people who fled from North Darfur, Khartoum, and West Kordofan due to insecurity arrived in Daba in northern state between the 12th and 22nd of May. Meanwhile, a cholera outbreak in Khartoum state is worsening at an alarming rate, we are told. Our humanitarian partners in the state report an 80% increase in suspected cases over the past 2 weeks, bringing the total number of cases to more than 8,500.
Dujarric noted that with the approaching rainy season, the United Nations and its partners have pre-positioned 30,000 tons of aid supplies in warehouses located in Janina, Nyala, and Tawila. These supplies are intended to support humanitarian operations across the Kordofan and Darfur regions. Meanwhile, aid deliveries to West and Central Darfur will be facilitated through cross-border corridors from Chad. However, the crisis in Sudan is not limited to physical insecurity. There is also a growing education emergency. According to the UN, 250,000 children in North Darfur alone, 250,000, have lost access to schooling. Across the country, millions of children are currently unable to attend school. The UN urges the international community to provide more flexible, timely and large-scale financial support for the humanitarian response. It also emphasized the urgent need for unhindered access along all necessary routes so that aid workers can reach people in need without obstruction.
The European Union has adopted legal acts directed at lifting economic sanctions on Syria. This move comes after a similar approach by the US government last week.
The European Union has adopted legal acts aimed at lifting all economic restrictive measures on Syria. The decision aims at supporting the Syrian people in reuniting and rebuilding a new and peaceful Syria. It does not, however, include sanctions imposed on individuals linked to the former President Bashar al-Assad. The EU has also removed 24 entities, including the Central Bank of Syria, from its list of those subject to sanctions. Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, has called the decision a right move and reaffirmed the bloc's support for the people of Syria. Last week, the United States government also announced orders to lift sanctions on Syria. It released what it calls the GL25 license, which authorises transactions previously prohibited and enables new investment and private sector activity. Syria's foreign ministry has welcomed the move by the EU, describing it as a positive indication for stronger cooperation and long-term stability.
This landmark decision by the EU is being framed as a gesture towards supporting the Syrian people in rebuilding an inclusive, peaceful future after more than a decade of conflict and isolation. But what does this mean in practice? To help us unpack this evolving situation, I'm joined by Dr. Yusuf Bahadur Keskin, Director of Amasya University's Social and Strategic Research Center. Dr. Yusuf, welcome to the program.
Hello, welcome.
Dr. Yusuf, since the EU's and Washington's announcement to lift economic sanctions on Syria, have we seen immediate reactions or shifts in economic activity, particularly in terms of foreign investment or trade flows?
Actually, we watched an internal war in Syria and it longed more than 13 years. The regime of Assad damaged on Syrian peoples and Syrian people suffered greatly during the war.
Yes.
And of course, the EU and United States applied some sanctions on Syrian government, Assad government. And of course, these sanctions were also in place for the Ahmed al-Shara government in Damascus. We all followed Trump's Gulf tour and his meeting with Ahmed al-Shara in Riyadh under the umbrella of Saudi Arabia. And the process of lifting sanctions has begun in Riyadh for USA, for other Western countries. This is very important for Syria's reconstruction. It was a barrier to the flow of capital from Europe, from West, and especially from Gulf states. Into Syria. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, and they were looking to start the capital flow to Syria, but the sanctions were a big trouble for all of these countries and also for Turkey. It was a barrier. And many countries were concerned about the Caesar sanctions. They specifically made a request from Trump, the Gulf leaders, and then now legal regulations will be completed in the US and in some European countries or other Western countries, and then the capital flow will start. It will accelerate. However, for larger investments to come to Syria, to Damascus administration, has some homework to do. A constitution, an inclusive government, ensuring security and stability, they have some homework. So expecting a major investment movement in a week or in a month, it would be overly optimistic. But in the coming periods, foreign investments, especially from Western countries and Gulf countries, will gain a momentum. And inshallah, brighter days are coming for Syria.
Dr. Yusuf, are there specific sectors such as agriculture, construction or energy that appear to be benefiting first or most from this easing of restrictions?
Yes, these are sectors in which Syria can succeed. Agriculture is vital for the country's reconstruction. It's possible to conduct agriculture projects on Syrian lands, on Syrian soil. There are common projects that can be carried out jointly with Turkey. And in fact, the local population has a significant need for food products. Since the civil war began, imports have increased greatly in Syria, and we know that there was a support from Iran administration during the Assad regime. Now Syria needs to make a step in agriculture to stand on its feet. And Turkey has significant expertise to provide crucial support here. As for construction, the country suffered heavy damage during the civil war. And another topic, on February 6, 2023, in northern part of Syria, was also heavily damaged because of an earthquake. Therefore, Syria could now turn into a massive construction site. Homes, public institutions, factories, ports, all these constructions are necessary to bring Syria back to life. And an energy issue, Syria has oil reserves, but not very large, like Iraq, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia. And now after the war, unfortunately, Syrian people have to rely on gas assistance from Qatar for its electricity production. Without electricity, there can be no production. The energy sector also needs to revitalize urgently. In conclusion, yes, I expect rapid progress in all these three sectors you said. Each is more critical than the other.
Dr. Yusuf Bahadur Keskin, thank you very much for sharing your time and perspective with us today. We truly appreciate your time. The fall of empires creates windows of possibility and peril. In the shadow of the Russian Empire's collapse, the South Caucasus briefly reimagined its future through bold experiments in independence. This is the story of how fragile dreams lay the groundwork for lasting nations.
In the final decades of the Russian Empire, the South Caucasus was home to a mosaic of nationalities: Armenians, Georgians, and Azerbaijanis, each with distinct identities but living under centralized Russian control. The 1917 Russian Revolution shattered that control, unleashing a power vacuum and a scramble for self-determination. As the Bolsheviks seized power in the north and the Ottoman Empire advanced from the west, the South Caucasus became a geopolitical crossroads, torn between collapsing empires, foreign invasions, and rising internal tensions. After the collapse of the Russian Empire, a short-lived attempt to unify the South Caucasus emerged. The Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic, declared in April 1918. But fundamental differences between Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan in national goals, foreign policy, and positions toward the Ottomans and Bolsheviks led to its rapid collapse. By May, the federation dissolved, with Georgia the first to withdraw. Influential Georgian political and intellectual groups did not acknowledge Soviet power, which was established in Russia after the revolution of 1917. In Georgia, the path to independence began with a national convention in Tbilisi in November 1917. The National Council of Georgia was elected, and on 26 May 1918, the Democratic Republic of Georgia was proclaimed. Led by the Menshevik Noé Ramishvili, Georgia quickly built democratic institutions. The 1919 elections brought a multi-party parliament with protections for minorities, women's rights, and even the abolition of the death penalty in its first constitution, adopted on 21 February 1921. But just 4 days later, under cannon fire, the Red Army invaded, and on 25 February, Georgia was annexed by Soviet forces. The Azerbaijan Democratic Republic was declared just 2 days after Georgia, on 28 May 1918, in Tbilisi, because Baku was under Soviet control at the time. The city was governed by Sovnarkom, the highest executive authority of the Soviet republics. This was followed by the brief rule of the Central Caspian dictatorship that replaced the Baku Commune after the July coup of 1918. Meanwhile, the Azerbaijani National Council, led by Mamad Amin Rasulzadeh of the Musavat Party, governed from Ganja. On 15 September 1918, Ottoman and Azerbaijani forces entered Baku in the decisive Battle of Baku, liberating the city and restoring it as the capital. Azerbaijan went on to become the first secular parliamentary republic in the Muslim East. The republic lasted only 23 months, until 28 April 1920, when Red Army entered Baku, and Azerbaijan was incorporated into the Soviet Union. Armenia also declared independence on 28 May 1918. Led by the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, known as Dashnaks, the First Republic of Armenia emerged in the midst of war, famine, and displacement. The Batum Treaty in June 1918 forced Armenia to cede 20,000 square kilometers to the Ottomans. Aram Manoukian, widely regarded as the founding father of the Republic, played a vital role in repelling Ottoman advances and stabilizing the state under extreme conditions. But without unity or strong defenses, Armenia became vulnerable to outside threats. By December 1920, it fell to the Bolsheviks and became the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. Despite lasting barely 2 years, the first South Caucasus republics laid enduring foundations. They established currencies, universities, and constitutions, promoted native languages, and supported the development of theatre, literature, and music. Yerevan State University was founded in 1919. In Azerbaijan, Baku State University opened the same year. Young Republic of Azerbaijan granted women full voting rights, ahead of many Western nations. In Georgia, women entered parliament and helped draft the first constitution. Armenian banknotes, printed in Armenian, Russian, and French, symbolized sovereignty. At the Paris Peace Conference, South Caucasus leaders sought international recognition. US President Woodrow Wilson acknowledged their aspirations, though global powers prioritized stability over new borders. "We do not want to divide the world into small pieces," Wilson told the Azerbaijani delegation. Yet for the peoples of the South Caucasus, unity proved impossible. Still, their brief independence shaped national identities, launched institutions, and created symbols that re-emerged after 1991, when these nations finally reclaimed the independence first imagined in 1918.
Kazakhstan is looking to learn from China's experience in nuclear and water environmental safety. This was a major topic during talks about Kazakhstan's first nuclear power plant. Our Farisa Kalimurzana has the details.
Kazakhstan expressed interest in studying China's experience in ensuring nuclear and water environmental safety at all stages of the project implementation. The chairman of the Atomic Energy Agency of Kazakhstan met with the Deputy Minister of Ecology of China and head of the National Nuclear Safety Administration. The parties discussed prospects for cooperation in the nuclear energy sector, particularly the country's first nuclear power plant project, the development of the nuclear fuel cycle, and the strengthening of the scientific and technical base. Currently, preparations for construction are actively underway. A short list of potential technology suppliers has been formed, which includes 4 international corporations: China's CNNC with its reactor, Russia's Rosatom, South Korea's KCNP, and France EDF. The first Kazakh nuclear power plant with a capacity of 2.4 gigawatts is planned to be built in Almaty region. New power transmission lines will be required to connect the plant to the power grid. The project may be financed through export credits and loans from international financial organizations. The decision on the choice of the partner company is expected before the end of the first half of the year. Initially, this was planned for the end of 2022, but the dates have been postponed several times. The final decision was delayed until after the Republican referendum held in October 2024. More than 71% of Kazakhstanis supported the construction of the nuclear power plant. According to the preliminary estimates by Li Diong, Deputy Chief Representative of the Chinese National Nuclear Corporation, the cost of 1.2 gigawatt power unit may amount to about $2.73 billion. Accordingly, if the construction is entrusted to China's CNNC, the total cost of the two-unit station will reach approximately $5.47 billion. The project is expected to take about 5 years to complete, with the nuclear power plant scheduled to be commissioned in 2035. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates.